Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3 Irony and today we are doing our 3-week mid-league economy, early league economy, mid-league. I don't know, it kind of feels like a mid-league economy update with the amount of currency that is floating around in Legion League. And yet we're only 3 to 4 weeks, really starting our 4th week into the league. So it's really quite interesting to observe all of the present trends in the economy. For those of you who are new here to the channel and the community and aren't quite sure exactly how we do things around here, you can of course like, subscribe, and ding the bell for more videos just like this one. And there are some timestamps that are placed directly above my entirely bald forehead for your convenience. All of our links and our references will be cited down below in the video description for your benefit if you'd like to fact check us or citation check us in the future, or if you'd simply like to reference any of the things that we're referencing from. So today we are taking a look at the Legion League economy, taking a look specifically at currency, at fragments, at incubators, which is of course tied into the Legion League mechanic, and then of course some big ticket items as well, and price comparing them, and then making some totally useless predictions about what may or may not happen with the economy moving forward. So first off, when we're taking a look at the economy, it's great to go over and take a look at POE Ninja to pull up general trends inside the economy and exactly how different things are trading in terms of their value against various currencies. So first off, this is the standard tab. You can notice that those of you who are veterans picked up on that right away for guessing that there's eternal orbs. Of course, there aren't eternal orbs in Legion League. What I did was actually take both Legion as well as Standard League and simply compare the various top currencies and their prices. Any of these green links that you can see in this terribly small image, any of these green links mean that there's still room to grow going into Standard League. A red link, which there's only one red link, is Exalted Orbs, means that it is slightly overpriced in Legion League and actually would need to come down, or Standard would need to come up in order for it to move. And then a purple line is that they are roughly trading at the same rate. So that's where we're at presently in between Legion and Standard. Most currency is still on its trajectory upward to meet where Standard is at. We've got an entire video actually that talks about inflation, that talks about why is it that temporary leagues typically come up in their prices to meet Standard, and why is it that Standard League generally doesn't come down to meet league prices. So if you've got questions about that or comments about that, I'll simply probably reference you to that video in our Bank of Exile series. It's an excellent video talking about inflation. That being said, we've got Mirrors of Calandra, which right now are going for about 15K supposedly. Most of them are trading at this point in time in between 95 to 105 Exalted. Mirror Shards are going for about 795 Chaos. Exalted Orbs today are going really for about 158 to 160 is what I've seen them moving at today as I've been trading. Blessings of Chayula are at 39 Chaos, which is interesting considering how the meta is starting to shape up and change around Breachstones. Orb of Annulments are at 17 to 16 Chaos. There are even some people who are buying them up towards 18 and 19, depending on if you've got bulk. And then Divines are actually trading right around the same as Annulments. It looks like there's a little bit of a separation between the two of them forming right now. But for the most part, they've actually been neck and neck. You can actually see both of them have had similar peaks and similar rises in their prices over the last 7 days. Ancient Orbs presently are at 11 Chaos a pop, and Harbinger Orbs come in as the last currency item that is greater than 10 Chaos in value on average, which is 11 Chaos, but they are trending presently downward. Now, that being said, comparing Legion with Standard is a great way to simply project whether or not there is still growth in a particular currency for its inflation rate. So if you ever want to check what currency you want to end your play session with, you can always go and check on POE Ninja and check your league present prices versus the standard present prices, because typically speaking, a league will generally tend to trend towards standard, whether that's up or whether that's down. That's important for later on in our discussion when we talk about big ticket items like Atziri's Buckler or Headhunter. Anyway, we'll get to that in a few moments. So, mirror prices, actual mirror prices right now, if you simply go onto an actual search, like I mentioned, they're running pretty much between 95 to 105, 96, 96.8, and then coming up into the 97, 98 range, and then rushing all the way up to 105. And then there's a big jump, actually. I think that there's a lot of players who are simply holding on to mirrors at 110 and above. A point of reference, I went back and watched our mid-league economy update for Synthesis, which took place 7 weeks into the league. And with that particular referenced video, at that particular time, 7 weeks into Synthesis, mirrors were at 150 exalted. And so here we are, less than halfway to that point in a league, less than halfway to 7 weeks in. We're only 3 weeks starting a 4th week now. And we're already pretty dang close. I mean, mirrors have moved a lot over the last couple of days. They've really appreciated in value pretty much from Tuesday until Friday. They have spiked up quite a bit in terms of their value. They were even with Headhunters earlier last weekend, and then really Headhunters spiked and mirrors have spiked as well. So if mirrors continue to spike this quickly with this amount of upward trend, then we're going to reach mid-league prices actually over the next week to week and a half, which is really, really interesting. Just the amount of currency that is floating around Legion League, which of course I'd love to hear from you how your Legion League is going, how making currency is going for you. You can drop us a comment down below. I think that this is by far the most profitable league that we've ever seen to simply just alch your maps and go. There's a lot of different methods out there, but we are clearly seeing that the effect of having more drops, having more stacked decks, having more currency floating around, having more items float around, and having power level of players spike means that more players are taking on more and more difficult content, which is more and more rewarding, which means there's more and more currency floating around in the league. I think another factor that we've got to take into consideration here, just as we're staying on the topic of currency, is that this is not necessarily a crafting heavy league. Yes, there are lots of multi-modded weapons out there, whether that's multi-modded bows for spellcasters that are using ED and Contagion, or whether or not you are going for a big Cyclone melee weapon like a Flesh Ripper with a lot of multi-mods on it. Those are certainly there in terms of crafting, but what I mean when I say this is not a craft-heavy league, when comparing this to, say, Bestiary or, say, even Synthesis, like the last league, where you've got lots and lots of people that are using various forms of currency. Last league, really, Synthesis was all about the annulment orb in terms of getting lucky on hitting your annulments and then turning items into the synthesizer to get those sweet, sweet fractured implicits and synthesized implicits. That type of currency spending on crafting doesn't presently exist, and it's not presently incentivized through the Legion mechanic, which means there's more and more currency being exchanged through trading and less currency that is actually being sunk into their usage. Maybe I'm wrong on that. That's just a theory. You can feel free, again, to disagree down below in the comments with your own thoughts and your own theories on what's going on with Legion League. So we're going to jump down to Fragments. This was something that was quite intriguing to me, just to note really quickly, that Cheula's Breachstone has actually skyrocketed in price over the last several days. Yes, 26% really isn't that much when you think about it, but when you compare it relative to the rest of the market for Breachstones, Cheula's pure Breachstones is at 215 chaos per. Then you've got Ol Natol at 103 chaos per, and then you go down to Tolls at 80 C. So when you compare which Breachstones are best in their best format, it is clearly far and away Cheula's, both for profit as well as, of course, for running. In terms of the Legion mechanic, the most valuable Legion mechanic related fragments are the Timeless Maraketh emblem that's sitting up there at 150 chaos per, and then you've got to come all the way down to the Timeless Vol emblem that is sitting at 17 chaos per full completion set. So the Maraketh are all the way, far and away, the most valuable and the most pricey out of all of the different armies to run. So if you've got those splinters and you want to make profit with them, or if you want to use them for running various Legion fights, you can at least be aware that they are by far the most valuable out of all of the fragments relating to the battles of the various armies in Legion. Now, switching over to Incubators. Incubators are something of a pet hobby. They are very, very fun. I think they're a very, very fun mechanic. I think there is loads of different design possibilities that exist with Incubators. I think that Incubators in the future could become league related. You could associate all sorts of content with incubators. Really, when you think about it, if you think about how league stones used to work, those of you maybe who are newer to Path of Exile or didn't play when league stones were a thing, league stones essentially allowed you to target farm zones and interact with previous league mechanics that you were interested in interacting with. And to me, incubators are that, but for currency. They are league stones, but giving you a somewhat targeted ability. It's still random, but somewhat targeted ability to actually acquire something that you would otherwise have to maybe go way out of your way and just pray to the RNG gods that it would drop. So, for instance, right now the top incubator is the Time Lost Incubator, and the reason for it is because it adds an incubated, valuable, unique item to an equipable item, and it drops after killing however many monsters, right? So the reason why this is 40C is because you can just add this. You can stack this to all of your different equipment if you wanted to with a bunch of Time Lost Incubators and potentially drop a Headhunter from it. So from an investment standpoint, you'll be able to make the judgment whether or not this is worth it for the amount of incubators that you would have to run versus simply saving up currency and either buying divination cards or simply buying someone else's Headhunter. That being said, from a gameplay standpoint, this is an incredibly fun mechanic because if you've got 40C, let's say you don't have the time or you don't have the know-how to go out and make for yourself several Exalted to be able to buy up cards, or dozens of Exalted, hundreds of Exalted to be able to buy yourself a Headhunter. Well, if you luck into a Time Lost Incubator and equip it, there's always the possibility that that thing could produce you a league-altering valuable item, which is really, really cool. It's a really, really exciting mechanic. I enjoy that. And that's just one of the ways that incubators are coming in. Of course, there is the Geomancer's Incubator. There is the Eldritch Incubator. There's the Thaumaturge's Incubator, which I've had a couple of these pop that have made me several chaos, where you get a high-level corrupted gem. I've had a couple of level 21 gems that have popped out of this and made me several chaos, which is really, really nice. These are very fun mechanics, and I'm looking forward to how they will shape up if and when Legion goes core, how exactly GGG is going to iterate on these. In terms of the prices, most incubators are 8 chaos and below. You can simply see the chaos valuation of incubators drops down relatively quickly. It's really the Time Lost Incubator and everything below. The Geomancer's Incubator is really nice in terms of giving you a 6-link armor piece. That being said, the return on investment for the Geomancer's Incubator needs to be thought in terms of Divine Orbs and the price of Divine Orbs. So when you purchase a Geomancer's Incubator and you use it, you can always guarantee that you're going to have a 6-link armor that's going to drop, right? So at the very worst, you are going to have a Divine Orb that you can turn in to your vendor in order to trade it. So if at any point in time, Divine Orb prices spike above Geomancer Incubator prices, that's the time to rush out and buy a bunch of Geomancer Incubators, because you're going to make a return on your investment for whenever they actually drop, because at the very least you can turn them in for Divine Orbs, and at the very most maybe you'll get a fantastic chess piece that you can then craft on and sell for even more profit. So something that's really fun and really exciting to see there economically as a gameplay mechanic that is shaping and informing the way how other currency and other currency markets interact with one another during this particular league. Okay, so enough about incubators. Now on to some very specific items. So there's a couple of specific items that we need to hit on. Of course, they are under the unique accessories. And right now in Legion League, you can see the price on Headhunters explode. You can basically time it to 2 factors. This is at least what I've attributed it to, is 2 different factors. First off, there's 2 fantastic streamers and YouTubers. One of them is Cute Dog, and the other one is Grimrow. If you're not subscribed to either of those channels, it's just a free shout out. It's free information if you'd like it. Cute Dog does a great job of updating with lots of different questions, lots of different discussions, and puts those out on YouTube if you'd prefer not to watch on streaming on Twitch. And Grimrow does the same thing. He updates basically a bunch of different economic discussions and principles, as well as testing out a lot of different things. Grimrow does a great job of doing various tests on returns on investment, basically, on whether or not different league mechanics are actually worth it or not. And so both Cute Dog and Grimrow both came out earlier at the week, end of last week, and really showed off a lot of different ways to farm currency with the Legion mechanic. And of course, because there are so many different rares that you interact with, whether or not you're simply interacting with the Legion mechanic itself, or if you are in a particular map, interacting with the Legion mechanic in a particular map, or if you are interacting with the major fight, the timeless eternal conflict between the multiple different armies. There's just a ton of rares that you're going to bump into. And so if you can use a Headhunter at any point in time during any of these encounters, either during just regular mapping or doing, of course, the eternal conflict, you will steal tons and tons and tons and tons of rare mods and rare buffs if you've got a Headhunter equipped, as well as if you're using the Inspired Learning Jewel, which the Inspired Learning Jewel is usually like 5 to 10x. It just depends on the league, but usually 5 to 10x. Right now, they're in between 18 to 22x. So the amount of currency that is floating around this league is just ridiculous. Headhunters, in terms of their average price, you can see right here on POE Ninja, is right around 113 exalts. When you actually go and do a live search for it, you can see that there's 45 results right now as of the timing of this video. There's 109 exalted is the lowest, which may mean those are price fixers. And then they go up from there, 110, 112, up to 113, all the way up to 114. This is something that, in my observation of the market, is unprecedented. For Headhunters to be this expensive. First off, for Headhunters to surpass Mirrors of Calandra, I would love to hear from some of you other veterans out there. Drop me a comment down below. I don't remember a particular point in time where Headhunters passed value in Mirrors of Calandra consistently. Maybe for like a day or two, right? Maybe like early on in a league, if somebody gets an early Headhunter drop versus there's several different mirrors that have dropped, right? Like outside of an anomalous, very, very far out outlier, to have Headhunters consistently valued higher than Mirrors of Calandra is incredible to me. It's another indicator that there is so much currency to be made in Path of Exile Legion that you might as well dump in 100 plus exalted into a Headhunter versus dumping in a mirror plus maybe 10 to 20 to 30 exalted on a mirror to your item, because the Headhunter is actually going to bring you more value and more bang for your buck actually over the long term as you're farming the Legion mechanic and interacting with the timeless conflict, which is amazing to think about. It really is incredible to think about the value of Headhunter and how expensive it is. So that being said, I feel bad for any of you that were hoping for a Headhunter this league as your first league that you were aiming for a Headhunter, simply because it's at a point in time where it's at its most expensive. That being said, there's also the most available currency for you to go out there and farm it to get your Headhunter. So I encourage you, if that's your goal for this league, go out and get it. Because this is the league where it is rewarding. For a point of comparison, just to jump over to Standard, again, POE Ninja, jumping over to Standard, this right here is 144 exalted for one of these timeless reliquary key dropped Headhunter. For just a regular Headhunter, they're sitting at 49 exalted. 49 exalted in Standard League. Again, if you want to compare this on Standard for a live search, just to say, oh, well, maybe POE Ninja's data is grabbing data over multiple days, just looking at something that's live, when we're looking for Headhunters and swapping over to Standard, you can see it's 109 to 113 in Legion, and it's 41 to 50 to maybe 52, 55. There's really not that much movement, maybe all the way up to 60. For a Headhunter, it's like half the price in Standard League. And for those of you, again, that are confused about this or are wondering why does that matter, because typically, leagues move up to meet Standard in their prices. That's just the typical trend over time, over the course of the lifespan of a league. And right now, Headhunter is sitting at almost just straight up twice what the value of it is in Standard. So, a couple of recommendations. One, if you are trying to farm a Headhunters this league, go do it. Like, put your nose to the grindstone. There's tons and tons of currency out there. Go farm maps. Go farm your currency. Go farm the Domain of Timeless Conflict. Go farm the Legion mechanic. There are so many ways to make currency this league. This is the league where you need a Headhunter, because a Headhunter is just going to make you ridiculously fast at generating even more currency, and you're going to pay for it back if you put the time in while you're playing with the Headhunter. So it's totally worth it, even though it's already the most expensive single thing that's out there. Now, one last thing to chat about here, which is the Atziri's Reflection Golden Buckler. This particular shield is incredibly build enabling for a diverse set of builds that interact with cursing, either cursing themselves, or interacting with cursing and particular curse zones that basically make it so that way you're cursed, but you're not cursed. And the line that does this is called curse reflection, as well as unaffected by curses. So if something casts a curse at you, it's going to reflect that curse back at the thing that cast it. But then because you are unaffected by curses, it doesn't say that you cannot be cursed. Just realize that. It doesn't say that you cannot be cursed. It just says that you're unaffected by curses. So certain combinations exist using temporal chains, using vulnerability, using a couple other different little nuanced uniques and self-cursing abilities that actually extend the duration of things like inspired learning or headhunter buffs, right? There's also a couple of other ways to make it so that way you can actually go low life while you're not actually low life. So there are lots of different ways that this particular mirror is build enabling. For those of you that are wondering, hey, why would I want to go low life when I'm not low life? Well, because then you can count as low life for pain attunement, which gives you 30% more spell damage. So there's a couple of different ways that you can finagle some really, really awesome builds with Atziri's Reflection Golden Buckler. In order to get this, there is a particular prophecy that you need to acquire, and then you need to go through some steps, some prophecy steps in order to acquire this particular iteration of this shield. That being said, these shields completed, so that way you won't have to go through the prophecy, are at 8x right now in Legion League. Again, this is just to compare and to show you the amount of currency that's available in Legion League. Okay, when you compare same item in Standard, 35 Exalted. Okay, 35 Exalted. So these shields, yes, are probably going to go up in terms of their value in comparison to Standard League. But that being said, they're relatively cheap because there's so much currency in this league that people are just spamming prophecies and getting this wonderful, wonderful prophecy that's typically pretty rare, and throughout the history of POE has been pretty rare. And yet, at the moment in Legion League, because there's so much currency floating around, there's so many silver coins to be picked up and to be used, that a lot of people are flipping these and turning these into this wonderful, awesome, previously before like very, very valuable unique that is now, yes, it's still valuable, but several orders of magnitude more common and more accessible. So if you've ever wanted to try a build that uses Atziri's Reflection, again, same thing for the Headhunter. Now is the time to go try it because they're affordable, they're out there, and those prophecy farmers that are spam clicking on prophecies are doing all of that hard work for you in order to make it so that way these shields are available. So go out and buy one, go out and try one. There are several different builds, and at some point this league, I might even feature just like a build that uses Atziri's Reflection, because typically this sort of stuff is out of all of our leagues in terms of the regular average casual player, the guy that's got a wife and a couple of kids and that works full time. Like typically this stuff is out of our reach, but with the amount of currency that's floating around in Path of Exile Legion, all of this stuff is very, very attainable, even for those of us that just play on the weekends. All right, well, that's our league economy overview of Path of Exile Legion. Of course, I think a lot of these trends are going to probably continue. There's still a lot of growth to go for the mirror, for mirror shards, for the blessings of Cheula, for orbs of annulment, for divine orbs. Me particularly, for those of you who I already can hear you asking what to invest in, I am currently still flipping just with my own currency for divines and for annulments, because I still think there's a lot of room to grow there, and those can grow and appreciate and value very, very quickly. Sometimes somebody comes out with a video, or somebody shows off a trick, or somebody shows off a new crafting technique that maybe somebody had been using previously, but it wasn't well known to the whole community. And so divines and annulments can go up very, very quickly. And generally speaking, as a league goes on, more and more people are looking for perfect gear. And so that means they need annulments in order to hit perfect crafts, and they need divines in order to make whatever tier it is that they've rolled into that perfect top tier of the roll. And so early on, divines are oftentimes used for uniques in order to roll perfect uniques, but later and later on into the league, they are used to really perfect mirror tier weapons and mirror tier gear, the more mirror tier gear that gets created throughout the life cycle of a league. And so that's why I typically favor divines and annulments as currencies to flip. Exalteds, this is the last thing that I'm going to say, so I'm rewarding those of you that have stuck with the conversation for this long. Because I generally like to give this piece of advice about a month into a league. GGG has a history of banning bots, of banning various botters, typically between 3 to 6 weeks in a league. Typically. this same time last year during Incursion League, Exalted spiked way above in Incursion League, above what standard prices were at. And within about a week, within about 7 to 10 days, we actually predicted it here on the channel. It was one of the few predictions that I made that actually nailed it on the head. A broken clock is right twice a day, and a blind dog sometimes finds a bone. Well, that was my blind dog moment. That was my broken clock moment. We got that one right. So I'm just giving you a heads up right now. This is the time period in the league between 3 to 6 weeks where it could be that there's going to be a massive ban wave, whether that's for botters, whether that's for scammers, whether that's for people who are abusing RMT and using RMT. There's a lot of different things that could happen over the next couple of weekends. That being said, I have no insider knowledge on whether or not bot bans happen. I simply observe when they've happened throughout the time period of grinding gear games, their habit of when they ban things, and then how that affects the economy. Typically, exalts crash right after a massive ban wave. Okay, so my typical rule is to hold on to your exalts. Hold on to your exalts is to turn all of your currency at the end of your play session as much as you can into exalts, because typically speaking, exalts generally appreciate up to a much higher return when you are away from the game than during the game, if that makes sense. So in other words, if you end a play session one night and then you're going to wake up the next morning, the market may have changed, and one of the ways to simply make sure that you haven't lost any currency is by turning all of your currency into exalts, where exalt prices continue to go up, and you can always get that currency back out from selling your exalts again. This strategy and this principle is very, very risky to do when there is a looming ban wave about to happen, because exalts are pushing now. Exalts in league are now pushing standard exalts. It would be my expectation that yes, there's a whole bunch of currency that is available in Legion League, but it happened in Incursion, I want to say 5 or 6 weeks into the league, where the exalts were really pushing, the exalts from Incursion League were pushing standard. And this has happened a couple of times over the last year where exalts in league have pushed exalts in standard. And almost every single time there's been a bot ban wave that has happened afterwards, and then there's been a crash. Sometimes that crash has been as much as 40C. It was 40C in Incursion. The massive drop and devaluation of Exalted, just in terms of Exalted to Chaos ratio. But in other leagues, like in Delve, the crash really only was about 7 to 10C, depending on the time that you logged back in to start trading. So it really just depends. So that's a fair warning. If you're converting all of your currency into Exalteds at this point in time, just be warned, be aware that there could be a massive ban wave coming anywhere over the next anywhere over the next day to 3 weeks. It could happen. It could also be that there's not a massive bot problem with this particular league, and so there won't be a bot ban wave. So thanks so much for sticking with me throughout the entirety of this discussion. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. You can, of course, leave us feedback for improvement. Leave us ideas, tips, and tricks for making currency, both for ourselves, but then also for the rest of us as a community. So let us know what you've been doing to make currency as you've been playing Bank of Exile during this Path of Exile 3.7 Legion League. And I hope today is the day a Mirror of Calandra drops into your lap. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.